This right here is the new Radiomaster MT12. And if you have been waiting for a surface radio for your ground vehicles that runs EdgeTX and comes with ExpressLRS built in, it is finally freaking here. As well, there is a whole new line of receivers for ground vehicles and airplanes without flight controllers. Yeah, that's right. You can now get ExpressLRS receivers with PWM outputs to plug your servos and your ESCs into. This is a whole new generation for ExpressLRS, for EdgeTX, and I am so happy to be able to introduce it to you. I'm Joshua Bardwell. You're going to learn something today. I'm going to go drive this freaking car some more. My GoPro! And we're going to start by removing all the notes from this car. I should say this is my very first RC, like real RC car. This is a 1/10 scale Traxxas plug and fly, bind and whatever they call it. I do want to say I bought this from Race Day Quads. I did buy this. Was not sent to me for free, but Race Day Quads has recently partnered with a hobby store selling ground vehicles. And if you're into ground vehicles, but you're not used to shopping at Race Day Quads because they mostly focus on FPV drones and aircraft, you should go check them out. It was pretty cool to be able to do all my shopping at the store that I'm already most familiar with. The first thing we got to do is decide which of these receivers we're going to put into the car. And I guess this is a good time to introduce those who are familiar with ExpressLRS to the new world of ExpressLRS PWM output receivers intended for ground vehicles, well, and aircraft, but aircraft without a flight controller. You see, until recently, ExpressLRS receivers basically all output the Crossfire protocol, a digital serial protocol that is used to talk to flight controllers. And I know that there are a few little technicalities that make that statement not true, but it's 99% true. And that means that if you had a ground vehicle with servos and an ESC, or if you had an aircraft with no flight controller, just a bunch of servos and an ESC, you had to really jump through some janky hoops in order to use ExpressLRS. That's no longer true. In fact, we can just compare these to the receiver that came in the car, and you can see they're basically the same. We've got a place here to plug in our servos or our ESC, and that's basically it. And that's going to be true for all of this new line of Radiomaster PWM receivers, both for ground vehicles and a different line designed for air vehicles. So what distinguishes the three receivers that we've got here? Well, this is the ER3CI, which is a 3-channel receiver with an internal antenna. This is the ER5-I, and you can probably guess that that is a 5-channel receiver with an internal antenna. And here is the ER5C-V2. This is a 5-channel receiver with an external antenna. And you're probably thinking that you obviously want the external antenna for the better range that it's going to give you. And it's true, this will give you better range. But ExpressLRS has surprisingly good range compared to the older control protocols that you may be used to using. So I think we're going to actually go with one of the internal antenna receivers just to see how well it performs. Now, the first thing we're going to do is open up this car and take out the old receiver and replace it with the new receiver. But I'm not going to plug the new receiver in just yet, because the first thing we have to do is bind the receiver to the controller. And ExpressLRS binding is a little bit different than what you may be used to. You see, you're probably looking at this receiver and you're seeing this little button right here, and you're thinking that's a bind button. And that's a reasonable thing for you to think, but it's not true. That's not a bind button. It's actually a bootloader button, and it's used for flashing the receiver. We're not going to do that right now. The way to put an ExpressLRS receiver into bind mode is as follows. First, I'm going to power the car up. Okay, the car is now powered up, and we should have power coming out of these servo plugs. Next, I'm going to take the servo plug from the ESC. It's going to have power on it. And I'm going to plug the receiver in, and I'm going to wait for the LED to blink one time, and then I'm going to pull the power. And I'm going to do that 3 times. You put an ExpressLRS receiver into binding mode by powering it up and down 3 times. 1, 2, 3, and the 4th time when I plug it in. Actually, I think it may have already been doing that. I'm not sure. But you can see that now when I've plugged it in, it's going blink, 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 blink. That double blink pattern means that it's in binding mode. The next thing to do is to bind the controller. We're going to power up the hand controller by holding down the power button, and it will turn on. And you're probably thinking, well, obviously, you're going to press the bind button on the controller in order to bind it. No. Welcome to the world of ExpressLRS. It's never that simple. Where instead, we're going to hold down the Sys key on the controller to bring up the Tools menu, and then we're going to use this jog wheel here to select ExpressLRS and click the jog wheel. We're going to do it in software. If we scroll down here to the bottom of the menu, we can find the bind option, and we will click bind, and when that is done, it hasn't worked. The receiver has gone into Wi-Fi mode, which I can tell because it is fast flashing the LED. I'm surprised it goes into Wi-Fi mode if it's binding. I'm surprised. So ExpressLRS receivers can actually be managed via a Wi-Fi hotspot using like your phone or a laptop. After 1 minute of being powered up without binding to the controller, they'll automatically go into Wi-Fi mode. I'm surprised that they do that when they're in binding mode. You'd think they would just sit there, but I guess after a minute of binding, it was like, oh, well, I guess I'll start my Wi-Fi hotspot. Let's hit bind again on the controller, and yes, solid LED, she's bound. We can also know that the receiver is bound by the C up here in the upper right that stands for connected, and if I hold down the return key here to back out of the menu, we can get back to the main page. I'll just press the page key. There we go, and we're back at the main page. And we can see the signal strength indicator, these RSSI bars here. All of those things confirm that we are bound to the receiver. Ooh, there's more buttons. There's freaking buttons everywhere. A switch here, a button here. Looks like it is. And what is it? It's just a momentary push button. And oh.
Trim center.
Another trim switch. Another trim switch here. Man, there's trim switches all over this frickin' thing. What do they do, though? Does it do anything? I don't see any of the channels actually moving.
Trim center.
So we got all these trims, but nobody's made them do anything. I guess that's up to us. Got a button here. This is a button. I don't know what that does. Doesn't do anything. So that's a thing about EdgeTX and this style of programmable radio. They got a million buttons and switches that don't do a damn thing until you tell them what you want them to do. You got simple controllers like this. They come pre-programmed, ready to go, but they only do what the programmer told them to do. Here, you have the flexibility to customize. What do you want this button to do? What do you want it to do? Use your imagination. It can probably do it. And that's kind of cool. But it also means that it's your responsibility to figure out how to program these things. And that's where guys like me come in with these tutorials. But we got a base level of performance here, right? We've got the ability to pull the trigger and have the car go, and we've got the ability to steer the car. We've got it bound up. I guess we should take it outside and drive it. And the short answer is, it's freaking fun as heck. I mean, like, there may be finer points of this controller that I'm missing because I'm not like a pro racing driver. But like for a typical hobbyist like me who just wants to tear it up a little, yeah, it'll get the job done. But the real question that we have to answer is, what kind of range can we get on this? How far can we drive it before it'll like fail safe? And I don't know how I'm gonna answer that because I don't have an FPV system on this car, which means I can only drive it as far as I can see it. I'm gonna do the best I can. Yep, as usual, when I wanna do a range test, we've come down to the road at the end of my house. This is the longest, straightest path that I have available to me. And in order to make this test as unfair as possible, I have set the transmit power on this device to 10 milliwatts. That's the minimum output power that it's capable of transmitting at. It goes all the way up to 250 milliwatts at most. And it is running at 1000 hertz packet rate. That's sub 2 millisecond latency, and that's the fastest it can go and also the shortest range that the system is capable of giving. And don't forget, I put an internal antenna on this. That little ceramic antenna on the receiver is going to give worse range than if it was an external antenna. In other words, I have stacked the deck against this as many ways as I possibly can because I'm just so freaking confident that the ExpressLRS system is going to impress me even with all that working against it. Let's go. Oh. So I actually programmed a lockout. Look, you see the LED's red? Watch. Now it's green. I programmed a throttle lockout on this. I'm gonna do a separate video about all the little modifications I've done on this and taking advantage of the programmability of this controller. I'll put a link in the card at the end of the screen and in the video description when that video is out. It might even be out right now. I don't know. Here we go. And basically, all I can do is run the car to the end of the road. And then like, I can't even see it to steer it anymore. Like how far do like RC car drivers actually go? Could like a really good RC car, I can barely see. This is my line of sight airplane experience coming into play here that I can just barely see if it's going left or right. It's just a dot in the distance. And, look, okay, so right now, can you read that? We've got a link quality of between 99 and 100. 98, 95. If I hold the radio with the antenna, here's the antenna, at the absolute worst possible orientation, it drops down maybe, oh, there was an 83, very briefly an 83. If I turn it, there was a 73 when I was touching it with my hands. Keep your hands away from the antennas, kids. But if I just hold it here straight out in front of me, the link quality is rock solid at 98. And of course, I could have the option to turn the transmit power up and go even further. So, yeah. Can I bring it back now? Okay, I'm pretty sure it's driving towards me. Now we'll just lefty-righty steer and keep it on the road until it gets close enough that I can actually freaking see what it's doing. There we go. It's pulling a little. I might need to trim this. Oh, a car is coming. Get this off the road. How are you?
Hi, are you recording?
Yeah. Oh, you're good though.
Oh,
you're good, you're good.
Is this all you do is play with toys, man?
Pretty much.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, pretty much just play with toys. So.
What do you like make them or what do you do?
No, I have a YouTube channel.
No shit.
Yeah, I make YouTube content about them.
Really?
Yep. Yep.
No shit. My
Yeah.
kids are obsessed with that shit.
Yeah, yeah.
I never.
My kids would be, they'd think it was cooler if I did like gaming content or something,
yeah.
right?
Oh my god. Oh my god. That is crazy. I didn't know. I
Yeah.
was wondering.
Yep,
That's awesome.
that's what I do.
Good
All right.
for you.
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
Awesome.
Thank you. All right. Yeah,
fun.
have a good day.
Get views?
Yeah, right?
All right.
Okay, I think we've established that this radio is pretty capable at doing the basic things you want a radio to do, like make the car go and steer left and right. We've established that it has a ton of switches and knobs for any additional functions you might want to put on the vehicle, and we've established that it has incredible range. It can basically drive the car out as far as you can see and even further. The radio that I've got has ExpressLRS built in. ExpressLRS is that RC control system that I was telling you about earlier. It's open source. It's got great range and penetration and extremely low latency. But there is a problem with ExpressLRS, and some of you might have already thought of it. And that is that there aren't any, I'll just say any, bind and fly cars and other ground vehicles that have ExpressLRS receivers in them. In fact, I specifically bought a 1/10 scale vehicle because I wanted to be sure it would have a discrete receiver that I could take out and throw away and put an ExpressLRS receiver in the vehicle. As a lot of ground vehicles come bind and fly, bind and drive, whatever you all call it. They come with a built-in receiver, and sometimes that receiver is integrated in a way that means you couldn't very easily just unplug a servo, plug it into an ExpressLRS receiver, and be good to go. And even if you can do that, I know there's a lot of people out there with big fleets of ground vehicles, and they don't want to have to go buy an ExpressLRS receiver for every single one of them, even though they're fairly reasonably priced. They're only about $15 a piece. So some of you are saying this radio would be even better if it would work with the bind and fly cars that I bind and drive, the cars that I already own. The good news is that this radio doesn't have to be ordered with ExpressLRS built in. It can also be ordered with what's called a 4-in-1 module. And that 4-in-1 means that there are the 4 most common RF chips that are used in RC controllers. Those 4 chips are built into the 4-in-1 module. And then there's an open source project that gives it support for tens, maybe even as many as 100 or so different protocols. So if you've got a huge fleet of existing stuff with existing receivers in it, what you're going to want to do is look into the 4-in-1 protocol project and confirm that those receivers are able to bind to the 4-in-1 module. Many of them will be able to, although I can't promise you that all of them will be. I'll put a link in the video description below to the list of supported protocols, and you can go take a look. And if you already own a bunch of receivers that are supported by the 4-in-1 version of this radio, that's probably what you should buy, especially because if you're only driving around within your own visible line of sight, then the range that ExpressLRS gives you is probably not really a selling point for you. The existing 4-in-1 module will probably give you plenty of range to do what you want to do. I would like to say, though, that if you decide to buy whichever version of this radio you decide to buy, oh, what's this? This little thing here is for this little thing here, which is a module adapter. What does that mean? Well, I got to frickin' put it on first. There we go. This is a light or nano form factor module bay. And so we can take a module like this. This could, well, this is it's an ExpressLRS module, but it could be TBS Tracer, TBS Crossfire, Immersion RC Ghost. It could be ExpressLRS, or it could be a 4-in-1 module. Radiomaster actually sells a 4-in-1 module that's in this form factor. There are many, many different protocols and receivers that can be used with this form factor. And we just slide this guy, there we go. We just slide it on there. And then the radio can be configured in software to use this module instead of its built-in module. So if you end up picking up this radio with one protocol, you should know you're not locked in if you're willing to have it be just a little bit more clunky. And I guess that's not even that clunky and ugly. You can have access to additional protocols. That's pretty cool. The batteries are dual 18650s. Mine came with the batteries pre-installed. I think that's probably because I'm a reviewer and they're being extra nice to me. You may have to buy the batteries separately. That's usually how it is. The batteries are charged via this USB-C port on the back. It is 5 volt, 2 amp slow charging, so it's not fast charging, but you just plug it in and then come back in the morning and it's all charged up and ready to go. If you are familiar with EdgeTX, and you're probably wondering, where is the USB port that you use to flash the radio and where's the SD card? It's right here. We'll just fold down this little cover here and we can see the SD card that holds the radio contents, the USB port that's used to flash the radio. This is a buddy box or trainer port that can be used to link two radios together. And this is a headphone jack if you want to hear the audio callouts in a I don't know who does that, but some people must. And this is a servo plug, and I think it's used for serial output, but I don't actually know what that's actually used for. I'm not actually convinced it's used for anything. There's one more thing. There's one more thing I need to show you. I found this in the bottom of the box. And again, I'm going to guess that these are extra. They're not included with the radio, but some of you are going to think this is pretty freaking cool. This is 2 extra little switches and a plug, and this is looks kind of like a Nintendo Switch Joy-Con joystick, and they can go in place of this panel. This panel slides off, and these panels slide in to replace them and give you 2 more switches or another control for, like, if I reach down here and work the joystick with one hand while I'm driving. I don't know what you would use them for, but this is an incredibly customizable controller, and that's what I freaking love the most about it. That's what I freaking love the most about it. I think there are going to be people out there who say this controller is overkill. There are people out there who are perfectly happy with a controller like this. Even though it's the cheap little throwaway controller that came with the car, it's got plenty of range for the type of things that you usually do with an RC car, and it makes the car go and it makes the car turn, and that's basically what you want. And if that is what you want, then this may not be the controller for you. This controller's for people like me. Like, I picked this controller up, and while I was working on the car, I had the car turned on, and I accidentally bumped the throttle, and pshh, the car drove into the frickin' wall. And I thought, well, that's unacceptable. And then I immediately sat down and I programmed this little switch here to be a lockout on the throttle. And then I thought, if I give this to my kid, he's going to destroy it. And I immediately went in and programmed this 3-position switch to be like a trainer mode where the car would just go slower if the switch was in one position. I immediately started customizing this radio. I love that almost as much as I love actually driving and flying the vehicles. And until now, there hasn't been a ground radio that offered me the ability to use all those EdgeTX skills that I already know to program it. Never mind the fact that it's a pretty decent freaking radio. It's really solidly built. Radiomaster is known for making pretty good hardware. I don't have a world of experience with other ground radios to really like get into the finer points here, but I say as a, just a normal user, I have no complaints about this radio. I'm really excited to see. This is the first time anybody's done an EdgeTX radio with ExpressLRS built in for ground vehicles. No longer do you have to 3D print and hack up another radio to get this. You can just plunk your credit card down and buy it for yourself. And if you want to do that, there are links in the video description below, and they're affiliate links. And what that means is that when you click any of those links and then make a purchase, for every $1 you spend at the store, I get a small commission. It's a great way to support the channel if you're not ready to become a patron yet or something like that. Just find an affiliate link, click it, go do the normal shopping that you were going to do anyway. I get a small commission, and it doesn't cost you anything. This is the part of the video where I tell you what you might want to watch next. And forget about what Joshua on screen is saying. I've got a better idea. That's why I'm recording this voiceover. I did 2 follow-up videos where I customized the hell out of this. One of them customizing it to my own needs and just showing you some basic things. And the second one coming from a person who is actually an experienced user of Surface radios and identified some features that most high-end Surface radios have that the MT12 doesn't. And I programmed them in EdgeTX to add them. 2 cards on screen. See you there.